Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Saturday night sci-fi shadow chat. You saw it in the title. Tonight, we are going to be talking about miniature games that aren't Games Workshop, because Lord knows there are a ton of them, and I've been playing mini games since 1979, 1980, around then, yeah. And I got started with possibly the very first sci-fi miniature game. Now, there's one or two that I technically could not have started with because I was just too young. But the very first one I started out with is, that's right, you've seen it here before, Galacta 25, made by Heritage Miniatures back in 79, 80, 79. And this is actually an original sealed copy. Now, I showed this off a long time ago. Well, about a year ago. And I've had this in my collection, not since then, because, I, as a kid, I would not have been able to resist, pulling this from the wrapper. As a matter of fact, I used to have a copy of this, and I do have this one. This was the smaller set. The first one was Galactic Rebellion. This is Star Commandos. It's just a smaller set of the original set, and I have every single blister pack they ever made. Star Saga. Okay. And this is how I got started in the hobby. Technically, when I first spent my own money, I bought these before I believe I bought these before I bought my player's handbook. Memory's a little fuzzy from back then, but I've been playing this game ever since. Reaper Miniatures has an annual Galacta game at the Reaper Con every year in, I think, September. And I got to be good friends with Michael A. Thomas and Jim Wempler, who put out Galacta 3 about 20 years ago. And I did some behind the scenes work promoting this game at conventions and things like that. I even actually created some miniatures for the game that were never created for some weird reason. There was a Sauroid Cyanite that I created, and I also created a female Cyanite that Michael A. Thomas from Classic Miniatures is in the works of getting them mastered into molds, and they will be available on his miniature site. I even have a couple of copies of the original paper miniatures. This game was super simple, but so much fun. Me and my friends would run home from school and build up a battlefield using Legos and go about having battles before dinner time, and then he'd go home, and I'd have dinner with the family and stuff like that. And I had an absolute blast with it. I still have fun with it. Little guy and myself have played a couple of times, and we're probably going to get to play some more this summer, hopefully. But I've replaced most of my lead minis with pewter or tin or whatever Michael makes his miniatures out of, so that we don't get the lead poisoning. Yeah, I know, right? Or any of those issues. Plus, the miniatures now go for about 15 to 20 bucks a piece on the open market. Now, let's go all the way back to the top of the chat. Bo was harassing me at the beginning of the show, and it's time to start the music. It's time to light the lights. Hello, everybody. Crafton Gamer. Weird World War II. We play nothing mainstream and have a blast. You know what? I love that idea. I have tried my hand at making a couple of miniature games, but I was more into role-playing games at the time. So that's where I, focused. 28 millimeter Star Saga Mantic Games. You and James are probably going to have a crap ton in common. Multi-gun man, how you doing? ReaperCon is just down the highway from us. Fun times. Okay, rub it in, dude. Squirrel Hermit, hey-oh, what's happening, my friend? Hungar, how you doing? And Bo, once again, I remember seeing Raul Partha minis back in the day, but I did not know where to get them or how to start I always wanted to add minis to my tabletop RPGs during COVID. I took the plunge. You know what? I'm so happy to hear that. It was Lincoln Logs, Catapults, and Mark's stuff for us kids. Yep, I did the Lincoln Logs for my Dungeons and Dragons minis, $20 a piece. So GW prices. Well, you're talking about something that's literally what, excuse me, 40 years old, and they're lead, 25 millimeter, and they're just super hard to find. So yeah, and mind you, that's $20 from Jagoffs who hike the prices, because you can buy sealed blister packs with 4 or 5 minis. This one only has 3, but they're one of my favorites. The Shock Troopers. Who doesn't love that, right? And I've got a couple on eBay that are in the $40 or $50 range, because yeah, I'm a jackass too. Hey Justin, Squirrel Hermit says, we ate enough lead paint off our cribs. Miniatures were the least of our worries. I know, right? I'm glad to hear that, Multi. Hungar, we made a mini game with our G.I. Joes and Star Wars figs. Yeah, kind of who didn't, right? Now, you say G.I. Joes with a 3-inch? Because, dude, I had the monster size ones, Mind you, those were hand-me-downs, but, if I would have been able to hang on to all that stuff. Elfbait is joining us. I'm waiting.
Yo.
How you doing? How you doing? I knew that would bring you out, showing off the Galactic.
I just got off work like half an hour ago. So
no worries. We have a schedule, but we're always open for, excuse me, the my familiar needs out.
No worries. So
Hungar, we made a mini game, which I read that. The little ones, yeah. And the little ones are still pretty valuable. I've actually got an original Chewbacca still in the package from 1978 or what have you, but that's the only one in the package. But yeah, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I've got stuff that just crazy older than myself. In some cases, my comic books and other things. Nothing tastes better than a bar of lead. Yeah, they used to put lead in the wine back in the old days to sweeten it.
It was more they just aged it in pewter casks, and they liked the taste that it gave it. So, and then all their goblets and stuff were made of pewter. So
that's crazy, but I'm none the worse for wear. Having played with lead miniatures most of my life, I used to even strip them of paint professionally to resell them, and put them in the goop, whatever that goop was at the time, from pine sol, brake fluid, and then scrubbing them with electric toothbrush. So I've got to be at least 1% lead running around in my bloodstream.
It's not the lead you got to worry about anyways, it's the lead oxide. So
even better, because I found out the hard way, if you mix your miniatures in any sort of citrus-based cleaning product, they will electroplate each other, and it's not a pretty sight.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So you're talking sci-fi miniature games that aren't GW, huh?
Yep.
It's quite a few of them. I mean,
yeah, we're gonna stretch this out. I wanted to start with the oldies but goodies. I also have everything John Carter from back in the day. I've got a copy of the original TSR John Carter game, and Hinchcliffe put out a really, really awful line of John Carter miniatures. And then Heritage took up the banner, as it were, and put out some great 25 millimeter miniatures and some really questionable rules. And I have all of that. I even have, believe it or not, I should have brought this out. I have the original Star Trek role-playing game made by Heritage Miniatures. It was the very first Star Trek game of all the games, and it's one of these thin little books like this, 25 some odd pages.
Yeah.
And I picked it up for like $10, and it's in perfect condition. And I picked it up 15 years ago or something. I forgot all about it. I was going through some books a couple months back, talking to Shauner, and I was like, oh my God, what's in this? Open it up, Star Trek, and it goes for a bit of money. And my old friend Crowbar is joining the stream. This is not his first time, but it's been a long time. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good, except your audio is crap.
Is it now? Well, I have the camera. I have a floating camera because I have an external camera, and that mic I'm using. Let me go to the other one, which I can do. You can barely hear me. Then is what you're telling me?
No, it's got a lot of static and weird modulation sort of things going on. Hey,
Really?
James, what are you waiting for? Get your
Yeah,
ass
I
in
only have
here.
like.
I sent you the link. Check your settings. Check for your echo.
I'm not sure what I can do about that. Do I have an echo too?
There's a settings bar at the bottom. Click that. Go to your audio. Drop your volume down to 25, and hit the echo cancellation.
Audio. Okay, so.
Okay, James L is going to join us in just a moment, and
Okay,
after
so
James
okay.
gets in, also waiting for Grim, and I think we'll have one or two spots left open, and I will put a link in the chat. No, we'll have one more spot after James and Grim get here. Grim's probably having the same difficulties as my friend Crowbar here. So,
Okay,
whoa,
I'm at
Alfie,
5.
Yeah.
your oldest game, what is it?
The oldest game I've ever played would be Galacta. That's the first published miniatures rules I ever picked up. After that, it would have been Rogue Trader, which of course is GW, but that was back when they were still good guys.
Yep, I have a copy of that. I like
and
it.
then since then, Full Thrust, Star Grunt, Dirt Side, Starfire, and then like the FOSSA tactical game.
Okay.
That was
Noble
my
Armada?
Star Trek. What?
Did you ever play Noble Armada?
No.
Okay.
I've played
I've played
Starmada. I've played played a lot of them. I mean, there's Grunts 15, and that's kind of working your way up through the day through to today, where you got like Stargrave, Planet 28, Rogue Stars. This is not a test. So I got a lot.
What did you like better, Stargrunt or Dirt Side?
They're different games. Stargrunt's squad to squad, and Dirt Side is micro armor.
Oh, okay. I thought they were very similar, but I guess not.
The coolest thing you could do with all of them, because they all had the same. So the built-in universe for all three games was the same, the Ground Zero Games universe. So he had factions and ships for, and then infantry. So you could do a planetary engagement with the ships coming in, the landing, and then you could do like the big strategic stuff with your micro armor, and then you could get down to the local tactical stuff for your street to street and all of that. And those alliances are still being done.
Do you remember this one?
Starfleet Wars? Oh, yeah. I remember drooling over the ships when I was a kid, but I never got any of them.
I actually have all of them and extras. And this game sucked. This game was god awful, but the miniatures, like you said, were incredible. And you can still get this.
I think the game was really just designed to help push their miniatures. So I doubt they put too much work into it.
Right. It was mostly about energy. It was very much like a next generation before next generation mechanic with energy, and shields and things like that. But Monday Night Productions, if you're interested, makes recasts of all the ships, relatively affordable, considering the really big ships that were, so big you could kill somebody, beat somebody to death with.
Yeah.
Go for about $100 a pop. And I've got all of the big ones, but they make them the big ones now in resin because they're just too damn big. I mean, they
Yeah.
literally weigh like 5 pounds almost each. Not 5 pounds, but
I've got
over a pound.
buddy of mine doing a bunch of ships that I had done using the Woodcraft stuff. He's doing 3D files for them now, so I'll actually be
Sweet,
able to
sweet.
print. And they're going to be much niftier. I think I've shown them to you before. It's these ones, where I've taken like Woodcraft and ping pong balls and stuff like that to make like.
I dig them. I dig them.
Yeah, and so he's doing them in full details with a bunch of modular bits, so he can build me a whole fleet, and we got like 12 different designs already, and he's still making more. So we've got everything from gunships up to battleships.
That's what she said. Hungar, hungar, hungar.
Speaking of Hammer Slammers, there is Crucible, which is the new Hammer Slammers miniatures rules. And when I say new, they've been out over a decade, but they're the current, officially sanctioned by Drake himself, miniatures combat rules.
I also had all of the Star Blazers books and minis, and like an idiot, I sold them.
Those Star Blazers minis were ridiculous, though. The tiny little etched brass stuff that they put on those was just, I mean, they're gaming miniatures. You don't need to build them to be all super model accurate,
And yet they did. I don't know who put them out, but Crowbar, I know you're not as up to the minis as most of us here. So what would be an IP that you would bring to the miniature universe?
See, you know me, I will get ridiculous, waves and waves of, whatever I get waves and waves of. That's kind of my thing. Everything I run is numbers, and I love numbers and speed numbers. So I do the kind of blitzkrieg / overwhelming firepower. And it's the same time. That's why I kind of look at it. I don't believe in overwhelming anything. So that's why it would be different.
So basically, Zentradi tactic.
Well, that, I guess that, but I'm overwhelming numbers, speed, and powerful memory, and again, tactics, just like hit and runs, whatever I got to do, but coming in fast.
Oh man,
I do it remote too. I mean, I'll send a B and just watch.
All right, Crowbar, I'm gonna have you do something. I'm gonna have you hit the leave studio button and come back in, and maybe that'll help with your audio. Okay.
Okay. So leave.
Don't worry.
How do I do that?
There's a little red button down at the bottom by the settings and mute button.
Got it.
Come back, hit the link, and I'll bring you right back in. Lord Jim, how are you doing?
Great, man. Sorry I'm a bit late. I was just it's very hot. It's very hot, so I had a shower.
It snowed here all day, and I mean it was snow because it did pile up, but then the sun came out and it melted, and then it did it again, and now it's just rain or sleet or whatever you want to call it. So what's the oldest game you've got on in your collection?
The oldest game? Oh,
yeah,
man.
Let's start with the oldie moldies.
You're exposing me as a non-Bronyard. I probably got back into this hobby over the past couple of years. It probably started around a little bit before the whole virus thing happened, and for that 2 years where you couldn't really go out that much, at least not without people getting up your nose about it. That's really when I started the great accumulation. But so I'm definitely a noob by anyone's standards, but the oldest game I have, a game that I actually played when I was a teenager, and one of the things that kind of left the thread for me to pick up later on was Hordes of the Things, which I have right here. This, I think, is probably the most complete basic war game of all time that maintains some simplicity. It's primarily aimed at fantasy, but you can do sci-fi stuff with it, no problem. When it comes to really strongly recommending a sci-fi skirmish game, this is where I'm at. Void Pirates.
Void Pirates, huh? Okay, you know what?
Yeah.
Hold on, guys. I am making a huge ass mistake. I need to take notes because I asked my friend Crowbar what was, an IP he'd like to see, and he was having technical difficulties. But I noticed the chat was talking about Space Above and Beyond. What a phenomenal series. Crowbar, I'll have you here in just a second. I need to write this crap down.
Rebel Minis. They do human infantry. Coruscant back in 2014 posted that they were doing Chigs, but they never came out with them. It's one of Coruscant's.
Coruscant has a really weird release schedule. Otherwise, I would have the Knights of St. John in Malta that they were promising for ages, like keep the Turks out of Europe.
I could do an entire stream on Coruscant.
James, what was that game again, real quick, before you put it away?
Oh, Void Pirates, and I think it's available on like drive-through.
Yeah, don't get me started about that. That game I was telling you about yesterday that you turned me on to. It turns out that Noble Knight wants about $17. It's a $22 book, which is a great price, but they want $17 for shipping to here in the States. And I'm like, seriously, you can send it to me media rate for $5. Do you need to make that discount that you have discounted on the price back through shipping? If so, I will go to drive-through.
I mean, I don't like generally criticize retailers, because usually if there's been a mistake, it's probably like mine, like ordering things while a bit, off the planet, and then like sobering up the next day and then going, oh, I have an elf army. Okay.
You don't drink that much.
No, I don't drink that much, but I certainly smoke that much. Like I usually assume the mistake is mine, but Noble Knight does seem very expensive. And whatever issues people have with drive-through, you can't beat the convenience. That's why they've done so well. I think it's all there.
I may have to get that. I may have to get that game from drive-through instead, depending on what the shipping is. Yeah, exactly, Bo. I don't even get me started. I've never had a bad transaction with them getting what they say. It's always just the price, or if you go to their website and they got all this cool stuff and it's all out of stock, then why is it on the page? You know what I mean? Why am I looking at it, being teased, when it's an ad from 10 years ago? Now I'm bringing Crowbar back in here. Crowbar, you never answered the question. What IP, what franchise or books or movies would you want to see most in a game that doesn't exist? Or maybe it does and you just don't know it.
Well, here, like Starship Troopers, okay, like, I played the original Avalon game a lot. Cool, that's where most of my miniatures comes from, is using that kind of game. And that is Tobruk. But that would be just like real space armor, because the Starship Troopers you see in the movie is nothing. All about the space. The Starship Troopers was their power armor, which is badass shit. And they really didn't touch it in the movie. But it was legendary. Some of that stuff, the equipment, the things that thing could do, it was pretty awesome. So
I just finished reading the book. I just finished reading the Highline book, and they do have a miniatures game, but it is based on more or less the cartoons and the movie, and that's okay, But you're right. I mean, I totally agree. Starship Troopers was my first real hard sci-fi book. I read that in seventh grade. The first time I went to the library, I saw this book called Starship Troopers, read it, and that was it. It was on Donkey Kong. I could not get enough of that. And even today, there's really nothing that I can think of other than, stuff like BattleTech or something, even bigger than that
Right.
scale
Or
of
Warhammer.
armor.
Warhammer does it pretty good too.
Yeah, Warhammer's power armor though was kind of lame. It was just armored. It's just armored suits that didn't have any built-in weapons or anything. So
Yeah, even the Terminators couldn't. I wouldn't face off a Terminator with a Starship Trooper.
problem I always had with Starship Troopers as a miniatures game is you'd have like 2 apes on the board because there's supposed to be like miles between each one. You know?
Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, that's why I made a better counters game. You know?
Oh, okay, I got to address this comment real quick.
Oh, okay.
We're WW2 Crawl just got the minis on the download. The Slayers look awesome. That's funny because we're reviewing Crawl tomorrow afternoon over on the Cigar DMs channel, and I have yet to watch it yet. So I got to once again wake the boy up early in the morning and jump on to watching that movie. I haven't seen it since I was 14. He's 14, and I've only seen it once. I think. I think. Well, you want to say something, Crowbar?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, Elfate. Then, what IP would you bring back as a miniature game that doesn't already exist?
That's a hard one. One of them that I've wanted forever is actually, I kind of got my wish when the Mac SF3D stuff started getting made by Slave to Gaming. So the Machinov Krieger stuff, the old 1980s model kits, that's being done in 15 millimeters. So that's awesome. It's been the last few years have been kind of my wish list. I mean, the Albedo Anthropomorphics miniatures game came out and I don't have an IP off the top. Actually, there is. William C. Dietz's Legion of the Damned. Yeah, from his novel series about the French Foreign Legion in the future with cyborgs. The Trooper 2s and the quads and just all the other alien military from that would be an awesome line of miniatures. I loved how the Trooper 2s had steps on the back of them so the officers could ride on their backs, the non-cyborg officers. So the Trooper 2s are a big cyborg that has basically a 50 caliber on its arm and a brain box that they can pull out of it when the trooper gets downed. So it's a cool setting. All the Legionnaires who are in the Trooper 2s are basically death penalty sentences that signed a waiver to have themselves live on as part of the Legion, and so they don't get to die. So if their trooper body goes down, they just pull the brain box out, carry it back, and then plug it into another trooper later on. And as the series goes on, they even have one of the quads. They got these big walkers that carry the other troopers in their bellies with a turret on them. They got one that's suicidal. He's got a bunch of Christmas lights on his side that are in the shape of a target. He wants to die, but he keeps not dying. It's a great series of books, but it would make great minis. And the Hudatha, the race that they fight, are an insane reptile race that are so paranoid that their council chambers have little armored alcoves that they sit in that so nobody can be behind them. And they're so paranoid they won't even give their fighters individual fire control. The fighters have to feed everything back to the carrier, and the carrier gives them shot okays and everything. It's just an insane universe. And they go on for like 3 or 4 different books, maybe 5. Each time it kind of escalates. It's just a great series. Legion of the Damned by William C. Dietz. So a local guy out of Seattle too, so he's kind of a hometown author. Also, he writes good cyberpunk. He has a good book called Bodyguard. That's a good cyberpunk novel.
Real quick, Bo.
Just to address Bo's comment, or you go.
Yeah, I was going to
Because I was
address
gonna say
both. You
something.
first. Go ahead. You're the guest. Go ahead.
All right, Bo. Look up Castles in the Sky from Osprey. And like there are just so many airship and starship minis out there that you'll find something, but there are definite Barsoom influenced minis that I'm aware of. It's just they tend more towards a 15 mil, which might not even be an issue if you're using airships. You know what I mean? It might actually be preferable.
Yeah, nowadays it's kind of easy to find stuff you can kit bash too with 3D printing. Especially if you can find if you can find anybody who's doing 3D prints for the Martians out of Space 1889. With
I was just going to say that.
Those are good.
Yeah, I mean the plastic kits that are just even in circulation, like War Games Atlantic, Bo mentioned the other week. Like they have some sci-fi guys that are kind of historical influence, but like human troopers. They have lizards that you can kind of arm in a medieval way or a futuristic way. They have spiders that you can build differently as like bugs. So there are a lot more options out there now than like back in the day when you'd buy like that plastic, like 8 Imperial Guard stormtroopers in a box. You know?
Yeah. There's
monopose.
The War Games Atlantic stuff is really cool, and they've started to expand their range by offering 3D printed add-ons for their plastic kits. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Bo, real quick, I have a copy of the TSR John Carter game that was not only man to man but also ship to ship, and I'm gonna try to get a PDF made of that, but it's only good to have, just as a collector. It's, the rules are almost 50 years old, and you could probably cobble together something better than that. I have another game that's similar to Castles in the Sky, made by Fantasy Games Unlimited, the same people who brought out, I think it was Bushido and Villains and Vigilantes. Similar title to Castles in the Sky, and it's just another old oddity. But I remember reading it, and it could be fun for back in the day, or maybe it could be played today. But
I
I'm
think old
pretty sure
rules.
any one of us in the chat could just write something up on an old typewriter and come up with something better.
I'm gonna have to get out of here, guys. Sorry.
All right. See ya.
Later.
Hey, before you go.
Yeah.
Next week we're actually going to talk GW. What do you think? You want in?
Sure. I mean, I love their IP. I just can't deal with their pricing or their sales structure.
Yeah, we can just bag on them for 2 hours. So
that's
come
easy.
back and
Do I have to? I don't even have to
be
awake for that one. All right. See you later.
Take care, man. Take care. Spot opens. Omen, if you want to jump in, I'll drop the link. Or anybody else new who's never been in the show. Crowbar.
You. Yes.
You got an IP for us besides Starship Troopers? You got another IP you'd like to see?
I'd like to see my own IP. It's like my world, the Amarian world.
Well, you've got a new laptop. You got a new laptop. I can send you. I still have the original Starship construction rules for, believe it or not, from back in the day. I could send you that. I could send you a copy of that, and you could take a look at it. Because you probably don't know. Me and the boy are working on a couple of projects for print, because there's a company out there called Biggest Geek. They're friends of everybody out here, and he and I have vowed to type up some gaming supplements, because we don't really want to do games when it comes to role playing, at least, just because there's so many out there, and to me it seems kind of pointless. I'd rather put my creativity into world building. But if it came to a miniatures game, that I think I could get on board with, just because of, like I said, choosing a particular IP or our own IP that we played. That would be pretty awesome. Now, as for my IP, if I was going to pick one, I'd probably actually, I know everybody's going to say, well, that already exists. It's called Ogre. I would pick Bolo. For those of you who don't know, it was these giant, 100-yard long mobile battle tanks that would just crush cities. And yeah, I could play Ogre, but I wouldn't mind seeing somebody else bring that to bear, because Ogre was really simplified when it came to the weapons that the Ogre had versus the weapons on the smaller vehicles that would fight the Ogre. And I get it. It was based on a really, really old pocket game that you could literally fit in your back pocket and take to school and play on the lunch table. But I'd like to see something where, kind of like how, my issue with BattleTech, but having just one big sheet with all the different counter spots and hit point markers and missile tube slots and keeping track of the ammo versus what you get with Ogre, just something a little bit more crunchy, I guess.
Right.
And that's because you stole my idea for,
it has to be real. I think
Well,
I mean, it was.
You know what I'd bring back in a heartbeat, but I don't know. Every time they try and bring it back, it just doesn't seem to take off. And that's
You mean Ogre?
No, Mutant Chronicles.
Yeah. You know what? The reason being is that the original Mutant Chronicles RPG and/or miniature game was so good that it literally went decades before anybody even thought to really change any aspect of it. The role-playing game, I know Omen likes it because he likes the Modifius game engine.
I like the setting. I like the setting a lot, but I feel like it's a bit unnecessarily complex. In some areas, just in some like the dark symmetry role and stuff like that. I'm like, there's possibly a better way of introducing elements of fate into this game.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to send you a copy of the original. It was. I'm not gonna say it was super crunchy.
That'd be awesome.
And Crowbar Crunchy means a game that has a lot of hardcore, lots and lots of rules. It's just slang in case you're wondering what we meant by that.
A lot of regulations.
Yeah, basically. It's
like the turn is it's what, 27 steps?
For what?
A turn is 27 steps, or is it just many rules and regulations?
It's something like that. Depends on the game, but yeah. Most games usually have only, the most I've ever seen is like 6 or 8 steps. But for the most part, it's 4. I want to say 4 steps are a nice, decent, number of steps. Movement, shooting, hand to hand, recovery. That's all you kind of need, in my opinion.
What they could do in terms of visualizing the game would be amazing, though. Like in terms of sculpting now, like they really could pull off something great. But I think that IP is like kind of belongs to a different generation in a way. Like, a lot of people don't know about it. I only very briefly knew about it.
Yeah,
and when I started reading about it,
it's one of the most popular games in Europe still to this day. When it comes to miniature war games, for up until about 10 years ago, maybe, it was like number 2 across Europe, especially, in places like Italy. I know for a fact the game, when it was out, was in just about every language. It was one of the first games that really hit and broke all those language barriers. If you get a chance, go on eBay and look at some of the miniatures for Warzone.
Some of them stand up very nicely. Yeah,
they're just as good as today. I mean, maybe not as good, but they're no
probably
slouches.
Not the plastics so much, but some of the metals definitely still
Oh,
hold their
absolutely.
own.
And
Yeah.
believe it or not, there were very few plastic miniatures for the Mutant Chronicles. The only ones that I recall were either in the box games, which were, board games and therefore kind of crappy, or the one edition of the game that had like a crap ton of Imperials and a crap ton of Bauhaus. They're almost all the same, except you had a couple of like leaders, and that was it. I'm bringing in Weird WW2. Omen, we'll bring you in just a second. Grim was supposed to be here. I don't know what happened to him. So if he shows up, I'm gonna have to kick one of you guys out. But I've never had. No worries. I'm just messing with you guys. How you doing? Nice to meet you.
Hey,
What's up, guys?
Just hanging out, chatting
How's
sci-fi
it going?
miniatures on a Saturday night.
Right
So
on, man.
since you're new, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 40 years in wargaming, so have owned a miniatures company at one time.
Which one?
I owned What the Miniatures. It was a small company. We did pewter tin, mostly in the weird World War II genre. So, but I sold it a while back. But had sculptors from down in New Zealand, and Forrest Harris was my caster. That's Knuckle Duster. So I've been in the biz.
Joseph, I'll meet you over there at the usual time. Sorry, I've been lagging on the chat. I did see you there, but we'll get to hang out in an hour or so, and actually about 2 hours. But I wanted to talk to you anyways. So take care, Joseph. So do you think that I'd be able to find some of these minis on eBay?
Oh no! These were limited runs. I was like the first guy to ever do American. I did a set of American Airborne zombies. I did a real limited edition, unofficial Captain America and Bucky wartime.
Okay.
I did like a Red Skull. I've done some Nazi like superhero villains in the genre.
Oh, dude, my son is gonna love to see that.
Well, come to the Weird World War II. We got a channel, man. All we do is we're the center of the Weird World War II world. I used to have Modiphius as my sponsors. I got a bunch of sponsors, all sorts of stuff. So if you're into Weird World War II, come by.
We'll definitely do that. My son that's like his main interest when it comes to historicals, which is weird because it's mine too, but I've never brought it up to him.
Oh, right on.
It's that weird genetic thing. He's I swear to God, he's got like all kinds of genes from my old man. He never met him. My old man passed away a long, long time ago. It's weird because like my dad spoke a bunch of languages, and my son is teaching himself German right now. He already speaks Spanish, and he's all into the whole World War II thing and World War I, and James will attest to it. I'm not a big historical guy, but I'm trying, for the sake of the boy to think of some ways to get him into the hobby, even if it is through historical. Some people start that way, which is what I did. I started, World War II and things like that with my dad, and then I got into sci-fi and fantasy. And now, once you get to be about 40, you have to get back into historicals, right, James?
Trying to be a weird World War II player. You're in between historical and fantasy, and everybody hates you.
I had a crack at New Kingdom Egyptians in my 20s, and that was a sign that there was something wrong with me early on.
WW2, you have to have seen the Reaper Chronoscope minis.
Yeah.
World War II. So you're not the only guy out there.
Well, I tell you, I was actually working with Reaper very limited. They were going to come out with a Weird World War II game. That's where those Chronoscope mini line came from.
Oh, really?
There was a beta, and I was talking. I believe it was Rob. I think who I was talking. The guy that just passed away. I forgot his name. The head of Reaper just passed away last year.
I know.
Yeah,
it wasn't even that long ago.
But yeah, that
last year.
Yeah. But that small chronoscope line of Weird World War II, those were going to be the initial releases for their Weird World War II game. It was great because you guys know Wayne England, right? The artist for Pathfinder. He did, he did all the all the first edition Pathfinder books, all the covers. He did all the artwork for that. He did an epic Weird World War II, like a cover for their book that never came out.
Hey, GM, how you doing, Fritz? I'm going to bring in Omen. Everybody here knows him. You probably do too. Omen, come on down.
I'm going to say this much because everyone talks about miniatures, which usually means that you're pulling out tapes and everything else. But I kind of like the war game style hex stuff for space because you need those distances to really replicate, to me, anything, especially whether you go in space. I would like to see somewhere between Renegade Legion, for the miniatures.
Oh, yeah. Wow,
for the well, in the old Centurion, and I understand they use counters, but like you just turn those counters to miniatures, and then they represent larger units, and that's what I kind of like, instead of everything being. I guess it's one thing if you want to do a single ship-to-ship combat and you start counting stuff down, but I like big giant space fleets, and I want to see the capital ships, and I don't give a damn about the individual fighter.
The thing is also the 3-dimension. You lose 3-dimensional combat in a lot of these games, and it's like playing Blazing Skies or whatever. There's no 3-dimensional element.
My father years ago. Now, it was a little bit different. I've never seen a game again. I don't know what it was, but it was in the 1970s. They had the regular board, and then they had a board that was clear. And awesome. You play on the 2 levels, and it was stuff for, my father was an Army officer, so he liked to look at those games. I don't know what it was called, but like whenever you'd have air or helicopters or stuff, and to me, you could do that somewhat. And I'm not saying everything's perfect, but man, could you imagine if you had some of the clear acrylic hexes above, in the middle and below?
That would be cool.
Omen, yeah. Crowbar and I came up with a better idea. You remember Crowbar?
Yeah, the one we elevate the stands, right?
Yeah. We had an idea for like, put it it was basically like a car antenna. Imagine your ship's on a car antenna. Okay.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. And depending on the manufacturer we could come up with, we could easily get a 3-tier telescoping stand so that you just count the.
I'm going to give you a little bit different. Is if you would have, and you've seen them, is those hexes we can stack on top of each other. So
I know what you mean.
Telescoping stand, it can fall over a lot easier. But if you have the hexes,
it's true.
You can bring them up a bit higher, and that way you can get some of your 3-dimensional effects. I
like stacking cups. Like stacking cups.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that I've even seen it. I don't know if it's the terraforming tiles and stuff where they do 3D tiles for everything, even for the stuff on, when it's on the ground. But I'm a big, how do I want to say this? As much as I love the ship to ship, man, I would love to see the equivalent of a BattleTech where they go in with the jump ship, you put the drop ships in, and it takes over a planet, and you have limited resources for the invader, and you have limited resources for the defender, and it starts skewing the longer the battle is, but I'm a big, when you say war games,
I would probably do that in more of a GMT. I'd probably do that in more of a campaign type situation. And just play a separate space battle that leads on to the ground battle, if that makes sense.
I was thinking kind of the same thing, James.
It depends if you want to play individual. Battle. Yeah, like I says, when it comes to war games, I like GMT style stuff. And then the minis add so much to it.
Pretty good, but the thing that I noticed about like the only game I can think of that incorporates like height and depth is a skirmish game called Dead Zone by Mantic. And basically like you play on a grid, but it's like big squares that can kind of fit a unit in them. And every unit has like a height rating as well in terms of how how high they can see, and the terrain is kind of marked similarly. So you don't have a full visual representation of like a 3D cube, but you do have indicators of like what can see above and below certain obstacles. So I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard to do something similar in space.
No, I mean, that's the thing is if you can do some clear acrylic, and I understand that Elfbait's talking about you don't gain that much. You do, depending on what your weapon angles are, because at a certain point, your ship has to start rotating, and it depends on where it can attack. And just because you get a form of a line, it's very similar. If anyone that's if you want to talk about the computer games, generally do sometimes a better job for that. But if anyone played the old Harpoon game. From the 1980s on the computer, man, you had to know all three things: how far your submarines were below.
It's true to it's below the surface and above the surface. See, that's the thing when you do the stereoscopic, like you guys are talking about. You don't have a deck there. I mean, there's always there's always that dimension below the horizon that everybody's standing on. I mean, you can elevate, but you can't, dive. So I don't know. It's hard to play. It gets complex when you want true 3-dimensional in a war game, like a tabletop.
Has anybody played I know it's a Games Workshop game, but Aeronautica Superialis?
No, you're talking about where they had the flyers for 40K?
Yeah. My son and I love that game because it does have an altitude. You do have the ground, which you can crash into, which, that's got to be fun to watch. But it's actually a really fun game. You can play a really good tight game with three aircraft per side, maybe even more once he and I start getting, better at it. Mind you, the first time we played, we picked it up fast, and fortunately I got it real cheap. So, I got it when I bought a collection of somebody's stuff and it was still sealed. We dug into it, had some fun. But I think
it's one of their lower barrier of entry type games anyway. I mean,
it really is.
I think at this point, even the people who are like really into Games Workshop are just like, yeah, I'll play what you're putting out now, but like stuff at the cheaper end, like they're kind of pricing most people. Like even if you're reasonably comfortable, it's like quite an ask.
I mean, they're destroying the hobby. It's too expensive. You can for $50, you can get a computer that can simulate anything more better. You can play with people across the planet for $50.
I don't
you don't have to build anything. You don't have to paint anything.
I don't get a lot out of playing computer games.
I'm going to say this much: is one of my favorites was Combat Mission Beyond.
Combat Mission is great.
That old one, and then they had one, and this is what bothers me is they had one of a Ukraine. NATO versus Russia in Ukraine. That was what 2012. I mean, before this whole thing came about.
Shock Force.
This was Combat Mission does the effectively 3-dimensional. They did the WeGo system. I really enjoyed that aspect.
Yeah, it's Combat Mission Shock Force. It's like it's a hypothetical Ukrainian battle zone.
Well, it used to be hypothetical. It's getting a little too close to reality nowadays. But I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a tactical combat, which that's one aspect? Are you looking at a strategic combat, which is the next level? I like operational level, which means that it's kind of your 4X style. And again, when I'm saying miniatures, is I'm using miniatures as for board games rather than using counters in this case, rather than what we're talking about. Pull out the ruler and start measuring stuff out.
Also, the tech level is a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, most war games are not one guy represented by one miniature. Like most war games do abstract the numbers. Like
it's really the tech level is a big thing too because
it's a bit more explicit.
Weapon ranges like Harpoon. Weapon ranges were miles and miles, and missiles were miles. And that's why you're talking about Hex is a lot better for certain tech levels because.
And Harpoon was what 750 to 1,500 miles.
Yeah, it was massive.
And then you were trying to look for stuff, and then they had you had to do the 1x64 for time. I liked Harpoon for a lot of what was there, and for space. sometimes I feel that they've dumbed things down, which Harpoon did not. I mean, that was
No.
well. You want to talk about putting someone into a if you did it real time,
Simulator.
real officers, yeah, they could really break down.
Yeah.
What was Harpoon? For the noobs out there, what was Harpoon?
Harpoon was a naval simulation between the Soviet Union and NATO for generally air and sea.
In the 80s era.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I know I've seen it, but it's been decades since I've been in a game store that would have had it. What is that?
That's another
Galactic
standard
Hero.
game. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wiley Games.
I love how they do things. I really do. I really do. Like, this game has every possible.
Well, and Elf Bait's right on that. Anyone that's ever played, what is it? Twilight Imperium. These are long playing games.
I was waiting for someone to get to that one. I've got it up here, but lo and behold, I don't have 8 people I trust in within 100 miles of where I live that I'd let in my house to play it. And quite literally, I'd have to, send certain family members away for the entire weekend just so me and the boys could settle down and play that game, because I know Crowbar would love it. It's an intergalactic, warfare game that just I've never played it. I got it.
It's a great game.
Copy. I got it for $20 on eBay.
Wow.
100% complete.
I mean, that's and I'm not saying, like for me, and I know what Elf Bait's like. Well, yeah, for this turn. Well, that depends on what type of game you're trying to look at. But the problem again is that's where I understand these wormwood tables and stuff where they've got 4 inches and you can put a leaf on top. That's what you start doing is like, okay, guys, we're going to put this away and come back next weekend. And, you're going to be playing for weeks on end, trying to represent things as they do the ebb and flow back and forth. I mean, even the old game I enjoyed a lot, which I wish they had really better miniatures for, was the Risk 2210.
Yeah, that was fun. That's a good one.
And quote, that was fast, but it still took 4 hours to do 5 turns.
It was. I mean, the futuristic sci-fi minis and the little. I thought they did a great conversion into a sci-fi realm.
Hey, Charlotte, welcome to the party. I want to hit some of the chats up. Okay, Fritz, Fear God and Dreadnought is one of my faves from the series. Is Fear God and Dreadnought the title? Or is it 2 titles? And yes, James is showing off his amazing new bookshelf. And he's got some great games in there. I mean, we've seen some other YouTubers out there with just, walls of books. I would show that off here. But because we are kind of a craft channel, I have to show off the things that we've done. But have no fear. My library is crazy. But,
I mean, yeah, I know you guys were talking about Starship Troopers. Man, I would still love to see them make they used to in the 70s make the little miniatures for that you'd play on the Hex board games. I love those whole ideas of things where, how do I want to say this? We're talking as much about miniatures, but then the question is, what are some great rule sets that are out there that are what I call miniature agnostic or system agnostic? Oh, Firefight, the old 40K Rogue Trader I liked because it was a very small tactical game, but it was the closest thing to a sci-fi game at the time that I could find.
And it was role players too.
System agnostic. It was originally kind of system agnostic because they knew their book would, travel all across the world, but they really didn't have the high hopes for their miniatures, making it all over like they did back then. Just the fact that they encouraged you building your own vehicles, aka the deodorant canister,
Yes.
speeder that, today they would just their heads would explode if they found out you were doing something like that or 3D printing. But
there was really no 28 millimeter sci-fi lines at that time either.
Yeah, or they were super niche that unless you at the time knew the people who were making them. You could find, yeah. I mean, I played stuff in the early 70s, early 80s rather, with my babysitter. And what we did is we took an old tablecloth, we put bucks underneath it, and that was our 3D terrain.
Yeah.
And
I played games just like that. Back in the day with Galacta, I didn't have hills or big buildings, so we would do that. And, people would be amazed. I wish Grim was here. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh, cool.
But we were talking about, your bug out bag, or even talking about the guys in Iraq who were playing Warhammer with rocks and dice. The human imagination doesn't always need these, incredible miniatures, but, once you do have some cool minis, the next step is terrain. And when you are on a budget or whatever, terrain is something you can just whip up and literally pull out of your, keister.
Well,
you wanted to add something?
Yes, I do. I mean, some of the stuff I've made out of junk drawers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can go to any junk drawer and I can make amazing miniatures out of the stuff there. I'm really, really so one of my fun little things I do is just go in there and just build stuff. And I'll have to dig out some of these things. I think a couple of them here. Yeah, or else more. I just need a junk drawer, and I can make some really radical stuff out of it.
Well,
yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things my son and I have been doing, for the past 3 years is, hoarding little tiny bits of plastic and metal and wood and rubber, with his mom just pulling her hair out. It's like, you're a hoarder. Yeah, you know what? No, it's called a bits box, but that's the garage. I know it's a really big bits box. Every single thing. And the funny thing is, real quick, I'll let you jump in, Omen. The funny thing is my son and I, she could pick up any random piece of garbage and go, what the hell is this? And Jackie and I would either give her the same answer of what it's gonna be, or he would say something and I would say something, and we'd be like, oh, damn, that's a great idea. We need to get another one so we can make one of each.
I converted my woman into a war gamer herself. So
oh, wow.
She plays with me on the channel, so right on.
That's never going to happen. Her health just isn't up to it. You wanted to say something, Owen?
I'm going to ask for things. I know that James has been flashing up a bunch of stuff, but part of it is the combination between miniature war game and kind of that role playing aspect where they improve over time without the full blown story and everything else. My question is, since James is just pulling stuff left and right,
campaign driven skirmish with RPG elements. It's the sweet spot between all of our favorite hobbies. I swear.
Yes.
Which one is that, James?
Like 20 or 30
James,
guys.
what is that again?
Pardon?
What was the name of that one again?
The last one.
Your recommendations for the best ones.
Oh, yeah, I think
the one you were just
best
talking
one,
about.
Void Pirates.
Oh, okay. I already got that one started.
But I also mentioned Rogue Planet and Fistful of Lead, Galactic Heroes, and Starfighters.
Well, and I haven't seen. I've seen the 5 parsecs from home looks interesting. So
yeah,
I mean,
it's good.
I haven't.
We just convert.
Isn't 5 parsecs from home like a excuse me, essentially like a solo RPG?
It's a solo campaign skirmish miniature game that has RPG elements. It's exactly what you're talking about. But you can play it with other people too. Octung Cthulhu.
Yeah, we convert role-playing games into war games.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's a cool role-playing module, it ain't hard to convert it into it depends on, we play a house. I've designed my own rules, and it's like you were saying, it's the mechanics allow for limited role play as well as very realistic tactical combat.
Yeah.
But those rules allow you to just convert anything you want to convert into your game. So I would suggest people, if there's a sci-fi module from a game system you like, just convert it into your rule system, man. It's not hard to do.
Or just use the setting even. Like, you know what I mean? Some rules line up really well with what you want to do already. Some are kind of like a toolkit. Like, I'm waiting for my copy of Xenos Rampant to come. It's been months since I ordered it. I don't know what's going on with getting that book here, but you know, that
Where's
same
it
kind
coming
of
from?
principle. It should be coming from the UK, but normally that's pretty fast. But I ordered it months ago.
I mean, you're all part of the Commonwealth. They should be there quick. Royal Mail has been on strike for the last month, I think, too.
I think that might be a big part of it. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question
right.
for you, James. Is because you're in Australia, are there any like Lulu equivalents with print on demand, so you can just get the PDF and print it off that way? Or
yeah, I mean, I could buy stuff from Lulu here and they print locally. Like, I think they probably use the same printer as Amazon does here.
Okay.
You know, so generally speaking, I can get it. I mean, I'm trying not to accumulate too many more rules because it's sort of, I'm trying to learn one RPG at the moment, and you know, everyone's like, it's really simple, and I'm like reading it and going, well, maybe for you, but I'm Australian, and you know.
I don't think that's how that works, James.
No. Well, hey, wait a minute. Here's what you do, James. When you get the book, you turn it upside down and start reading, and it'll go by much faster.
That's not been going wrong. That's not been going wrong. Exactly.
No, no, I was just wondering because I mean, you have all these little miniatures and stuff, and you know, the problem that I have with certain things is growing up around the military is I want realistic ranges, and when you start making things really short, I just it loses me. I'm like, well, the sniper rifle can only go 48 inches. I'm like, dude, I can shoot it.
It's ridiculous.
It depends. I mean, like, every new piece of technology, like in warfare, like gives rise to an equalizer at some point. So, I mean, it really depends. If you've got like some kind of like large caliber artillery piece and its range is limited on a 2x2 battle map, then yeah, that's a problem.
I mean, you know,
but if you've got some kind of energy, if you've got some kind of energy carbine or something, like, I can accept that, just being able to go as far as the tree line kind of thing, you know, like.
Well, even 100 yards at 2 yards.
I'm trying to rail against like rules less and just go with what's written and see how it pans out before I go, oh, this doesn't jive with my. Because I feel like I'm not experienced enough to be so opinionated about it. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to experience it. I don't want to necessarily critique it per se.
Well, you're lucky because you're in the generation where you just PDF it on your phone. Back in the day when we wanted to try something new, we had to buy a physical copy of it.
See, that's another weird thing. Is like, I have to own the PDF, but I like always read the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm a physical reader.
It's just more practical.
Wait a minute. It's great during a game to have it on my iPad where I can search it.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that when I want to sit down for enjoyment, I want to pull it open. I want to look at the art. I want to feel the pages. I want to get you get a feel from that a lot better than.
Book is still a really good format, despite being really old, right? Like, it just works, you know.
I don't know. I mean, you know, here's something we haven't talked about. You know, if we're going to be talking about strange stuff, it's like, you know, the old Gamma World, you know, Mutant Crawl Classic. That whatever happened just to our weird mutant, you know, post-apocalyptic dystopian worlds of hell, you know, that are where
you know, there really aren't a lot of those games, are there?
I mean, what was it? To me, Mutant Year Zero would seem to be a perfect one for that. For I guess if they have a miniatures game for it. So
was there like
I never really push rules, but I think this is an awesome one.
Which one is it called? Something's called Blades.
Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells. It's like fantasy, sci-fi, both kind of thing.
Yeah, that one's the next book I buy is that one. Well, actually, that or Scythonian Stars for Traveler, but that one's like $60. Even at drive-through, I'm like, You're kidding me, right? What's up with that?
Well, you know,
Totally.
I'd have to talk to someone that is actually in print on demand. Well, I don't understand why the prices vary so much between one versus the other, even when the PDF's almost identical. Now, some of my understanding is like, well, it's 600 pages. I'm going, now I'm worried about your binding. But you're right. For like a 100-page book, I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's only like 250. It's like 250 pages, but for some reason, you know, that Scythonian Stars, which is Cthulhu and Traveler, I've been looking for that for a damn year. It's never on eBay. It's never on Amazon. Drive-Thru has it, but it's got to be the most expensive book. I mean, I could buy a box set of Spelljammer from Drive-Thru for less than this book.
I mean, what's in that book that's so like, what is it called? It's a Space Cthulhu. I mean,
yeah,
haven't
it's
they?
just Traveler. I mean, I could, and
I mean,
have.
if you know Traveler and you know like Call of Cthulhu, you can probably just do your own.
Oh, totally. It's just one of those weird, you know, itches I want to scratch. You know, I want to see what someone else has to say.
So it's like a collector. It's the collector in you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you already saw at the beginning of the show. I'm quite the collector. I'll get it one of these days. But just giving Drive-Thru, you know, I get two books for $100. I don't care about the PDFs. I want the hard copies, and you know, I just can't. You know, I have to do some research and find out what's the deal with that. You know, hell, I can get a reprint of almost all the old original TSR books for like $25 a piece, except Oriental Adventures. Go figure. Don't get started on that. What the hell? I mean,
I'm just waiting for them to burn it. You know, at that point, the value goes way up.
I think they were just worried about taking the game in the wrong direction.
Oh, wait a minute. I've got one thing. Do any of you remember in the late, I think it was the late 90s?
We need to clip that. Oh my God, that was fantastic.
Hold it. I've got one better, and this is true. Anyone remember when the Chinese crashed into our spy plane and it had to land in China?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you know what the pilot's name was that was flying the fighter jet that crashed into the ocean? And I kid you not. Look it up. Wong Wei.
Oh.
And it is absolutely true. I mean, go look it up. I was like, no, someone is pulling my leg. And I looked up at the name. Yep. That was the pilot's name, Wong Wei.
Just to put notes to my friends in China, please don't launch your first strike capability. I take back what I said.
They're inching their way closer to you, brother.
I love Rice and I love crowded spaces. So please.
I'm going to say this much. The whole reason that James is afraid of that is he doesn't look good in a thong and, you know, with the little spikes, okay? He's already seen the future with Road Warrior, and he doesn't want to go that way.
Yeah, I don't want to wear the Zardos.
I could tell you a story, but I would get. Oh my God, I can't tell you that story here because someday my son could actually see it. But wow, does that bring back a really weird memory?
No, I mean,
wow.
Come on. Where did we get Mad Max from? That's all from the homeland of James here. He has seen the future, and it's like, this is not where I want to go.
Hey, I used to roadie for some punk bands in the late 80s. I seen it all, brother.
Yeah, I was in a metal band. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm going to ask this much because we're all talking about this. You know, we're talking about miniatures, you know, like Car Wars, which I don't know is. Does anyone have a good dystopian?
I've got the original, so yeah. Car Wars is fun, but Gaslands is more accessible.
Yeah, you should play Gaslands instead because
if you want to twist on, if you want to twist on the whole Car Wars thing, try Maximilian 1934. It's basically Road Warrior, but it's set in 1934.
Oh, wait, with the 1934 vehicles?
Yes.
Oh, that would be kind of cool.
Yes.
So
you got like boys anti-tank rifles and Vickers guns and on all these roadsters and it's a great game.
The game that I
And
brought
you know
up
what would
earlier,
make it even better? I had my ex boss when I was a PI. He had a girlfriend from Australia, and she had all these photos of her dad and his motorcycle club in Australia. Boom.
I get it.
Yeah, I believe the Maximilian is from Mana Press. They're done in Australia, man. They also make a skirmish game of Aborigine combat.
Okay.
okay, interesting. I mean, I did see some bush rangers that I was kind of tempted by, like outlaws, Australian outlaws.
Yeah, they're
And they had like an Aboriginal tracker in the police team. They had
cool.
like colonial bobbies and like Aboriginal horsemen and stuff like. It was pretty cool. I think it was a North Star thing. But I mentioned earlier, or I showed it earlier, A Billion Suns.
Mhm.
That's FPL, and it's kind of easy, and it's the same guy who did Gaslands. And I found Gaslands, like when I was reading it, I was like, this game is going to play a bit too slow to really communicate the feeling of like driving really fast. But for large, like ponderous space opera type ships, it's like less of an issue.
I'm going to bring something up, and everyone is probably going to laugh at me for this one. But what about just the plain old fun Predator versus U.S. Army, miniature game?
We play it all. We play it all the time in Weird World War II, brother.
Yeah.
Always. We got the
Like
Yate fighting Germans.
That's the most legit example that's been brought up today, like the good old-fashioned alien hunt. You don't even need to tie it to a property, like.
No, kid. You know what?
Yeah.
Snapshot was a decent, kind of take on that. It was basically Alien, but that is actually sounds like a lot of fun. And you only need what? You don't even need 10 miniatures. One alien and a a squad of, various. Any era, military figures, and that might, spice it up a bit as well, picking different eras like Vietnam or even WW2.
Well, that's, I mean, we're kind of getting away from the sci-fi aspect, but anything to me that's more modern. The other thing I'd like to see, what is it? Not that I've ever played the game, just by seeing what's there. The good old airship dreadnought, Zeppelin, I would love to see more games that have fights like that. That's the old World War I style futuristic.
There's a game called it's escaping now. Someone in the chat will be able to remember it.
They got Space 1899. That's airships
there
on
is
Mars.
a kind of BSF, like early 20th century fleet and air fleet kind of combat game. Like Fritz will be able to remember what it is, surely. Like, I can't believe I've drawn a blank. I've been thinking about buying this thing for like months. But there are, like, I think the BSF thing is kind of coming back a little bit,
I believe Avalon Hill.
I love it. Yeah.
Avalon Hill did a Balloon Busters bookshelf game at one time. That was really fun.
Hey, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'll bow out, guys. It was great talking to you guys. Look forward to seeing you guys again.
You know what? Feel free to jump back in next week if you're interested, because we are going to bag on GW for 2 hours. Hey, no, because there's some good stuff. They did put out some good stuff.
Hey, they were to be fair, they were a gateway for a lot of people. I have to give them nods for that, but then y'all grow up and move on.
You're the hot ex-girlfriend who just kept, reaching for the stratosphere. She's out of our league now, boys. Like, it's time to let it go.
At a certain point, you realize that she's just not worth it because you've already got everything you need from her.
My budget.
Well, before I leave, you guys swing by Weird World War II channel, and whatever you guys do,
Guaranteed.
keep it weird, man.
All right.
Guaranteed. I'm gonna. You'll probably get 2 subs because my son will probably be one of them. But thanks for joining in. And have a great week, man.
You too, guys. See you.
Take care.
I'm going to bring up one other thing, which was, and just coming up with what Bo was talking about with some of the ships. Anyone remember what was it called? Was it Dropship?
Dystopian War. Justin, thank you.
No, it was it Drop?
Commander.
Yeah, Dropship Commander. Some of those miniatures look very similar to the stuff that was in the John Carter, movie. When I was just trying to think of that, but my only problem is with all those little reflective things. I'm just like, that is going to be a nightmare to assemble. Let alone it's going to break off depending on the type of material you use.
You know what? I actually have one Dropship Commander starship that I used for a very cool RPG game because I just wanted something that looked like the ship that was in my mind, and I found it through them, and I never got into it, but it looked like a nice alternative to Epic Space Marines. Again, old Games Workshop. Crowbar and I used to play the hell out of Epic Space Marines. That was our miniature game.
I loved Adeptus Titanicus when they had it where it was easy to just pull off the weapon and put a new weapon on, so you can change it around. That was really nice. And then the other thing, I just love sometimes if they would, and I understand from a marketing standpoint why they do this, but from a personal standpoint, man, let's face it. I actually thought that the original Adeptus Titanicus was more fun than BattleTech myself. Because
you know what? I can't disagree with that in any shape or form. I literally can't.
Anyway.
I think that BattleTech is really good value. Like, I've just started getting into it. But to be honest with you, like, I can kind of see myself doing other stuff with the models in the long term, if that makes sense. Like, even the lore and stuff, I was kind of like, well, the lore is fun and, like, people take it very seriously. But I'd rather just open a box and, like, spray them all one color and start there, like a lot of the, like, there are like 6 main factions, but like they could be paired off like into 3 like easily in terms of their alliances and cultural background and stuff like that. So I think it's really well priced.
Hold on a sec, Kevin. Let's hear you. Your mic.
Nope, we cannot hear you.
Not
there we go. We lost you again.
You want to pop out and pop back in, see if that works, or check I don't know if you're using OBS or anything like that. Justin, yeah. I did Battlefleet Gothic, and before that I did the other one. It was Space Fleet something or other, and that was kind of cheesy, but I still had a lot of fun with it. And the ship models were, at the time, they were some of the best. The metal ones, not the plastic ones for Gothic, but the previous game where you rolled the dice in the box and it had this hit miss sort of thing going on. This little grid pattern. It's like a tic-tac-toe.
What's that? Similar to Man of War that they did that with as well?
No, Gothic might have been closer, but the other one I'm talking about was it had a bunch of, I think, space tile map boards that you could rearrange.
Oh yeah.
But you use the box to roll the dice in, and it had hit and miss, in the tic-tac-toe pattern, and depending on what number you rolled in what location. So it made it kind of an agility or dexterity thing. You could kind of shoot for a certain area, and it didn't last very long, but they brought almost all those ships back in for Battlefleet Gothic. And I got the box, but it was, like so many people say, it was like, ironclads and dreadnought in space, the turning and all that. I just couldn't get into it. The ships were great. I still have still have the Necron ship, the space station, and the Emperor's battle cruiser that I use for some of my other sci-fi games. I'm going to let Kevin in, but I wanted to address something that James said. Hold on just a second.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
There
yeah.
you go. Yay. All right. Real quick, Kevin. I wanted to talk a little bit about repurposing. With what James said about using, miniatures for other games, I could easily see, let's go back to Starship Troopers, literally using a couple of BattleTech minis for Starship Troopers, on the board, just so you get that sort of 3D feel. There's so many ways we can repurpose our old stuff. You may not be playing the game, but the minis, cross them over. That's one of the things I really liked about Gaslands is all you need are a couple of Hot Wheels and some bits from your bits box and a 20 to 25, maybe $30 investment on the book, photocopy the templates, and you're ready to roll. I mean, literally,
it wasn't so much my kind of game, but like when I saw it take off, and like I do like that author Hutchinson's other games, like I was like, wow, he really didn't realize that he had such a hit on his hands. You know what I mean? Like it really took off.
Absolutely. It even blew away the revival of Car Wars. It was so much more accessible, and just repurposing things just seems to me like a great way to at least get some use out of these minis that just might be sitting in a box or on a shelf. I've contemplated pulling out.
It's a very Games Workshop kind of mentality to be kind of like, oh, well, I can't use these elves in this game, or I can't use Space Marines as any other kind of power armor trick. Like
I'm gonna
it's whatever you paint them as, really. Like honestly, like
I'm gonna say this much: if you're a small publisher, it's a lot easier to bring out a rule book and which is what GW did, actually, to be fair, when at the very beginning. It's a lot easier to bring out a rule book initially to give rules that are miniature agnostic, because it allows players, and the more broad you make it. But that's one of the things that when GW did, if anyone remembers Warhammer Fantasy Battle as well, look, you could use anyone as a knight. You didn't have to buy their minis, and only their minis started growing out of what they could do, and then they became a lot more. But at the time, I remember their minis were far superior to what I found everywhere else in the shops. And I'm not saying that you can find other stuff anywhere else, but I remember the shops going, man, these are far and above the minis that are out there now. But now with STL files, why do you feel the need to have to go buy from a certain company? I mean, I may do it just easy, but man, if you're going to be big into something, print your stuff off. But man, maybe it's just me, that love of the original Rogue Trader, where it said this is how you can create these miniatures that are completely ridiculous, or whatever else. You just put a weapon on there, you call it what it is. You don't have the formal what you see is what you get mentality. It's like, you know what, hey man, this could be a melta gun, we're going to do this. You like, oh, okay. And sometimes what I wish that they would do, just for war games, because we're all talking about the minis, but man, I don't want to put this in the wrong way, but I almost wish that they would have a deck where you say, okay, you put down a card for what your vehicle is, and then you put the weapon cards down, and then you can just swap them out very easily. It's almost like a card game, but not quite. And then you have the miniatures that you move around on the board after that.
Well, one thing I do like about the BattleTech that I've seen so far is like, man, why don't other boxes of minis come with unit cards for the game they're designed for? Like, it seems so simple, but like it's so helpful, especially when you're dealing with like lots of stats, and if you're a medical idiot like me, then it's handy to have that kind of reference.
With BattleTech, I mean, you've got what is it? We got Alpha Strike, which makes things a little more manageable. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah,
Take care, Crowbar.
I'm not
see
sure.
You later on this week.
See you later, Crowbar. I'm not sure what your experience with BattleTech is so far, but when you say a card, I mean,
like 5 minutes.
Well,
5 minutes.
oh, okay.
You know?
So it's like I'm just not sure which products you're talking about because for me, a BattleTech mech is a whole page front and back.
Yeah.
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 That's one of the things that turned me and my son off. I played it back in the 80s, but with my son, it's a lot of record keeping, and it kind of takes away from, I mean, let's face it, he's 14 right now. He's playing Minecraft, and he could be playing any other video game and just not have to do any of the stuff.
They have a video game out on Steam now that actually does it pretty well when it comes to what the actual BattleTech rules are. But that was my whole thing. Is like actually BattleTech specifically was one of the inspirations for trying to make my own system that could still have things that are trying to accomplish the same thing as BattleTech is by having the difference between like armor and structure and those critical hits and all that kind of stuff. It gets you a little bit closer to the cockpit, I think, is really what they were trying to do. And it's a trip, but just on miniatures specifically, I think if you have miniatures, and like you guys were talking about FTLs and printing and that kind of stuff, and that just kind of like knocks it wide open. But if you are going to repurpose stuff, I mean, toys, like there's a lot of I would say 80s, 90s toy lines that are very consistent with the size.
See, I would have been so dismissive of that until I found Shadow and Son's channel and like realized it's really just a lick of paint away from being something else. It
really is. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you know what? Let me show you something real quick because I just got back from Dollar Tree today.
He's always got some kind of like furry thing. He's like, I'm going to turn this into a juniper bush.
Well, it used to be as a kid.
Okay, check this out real quick. This is a mech from an action figure line, and it's not really a mech. It's really supposed to be a robot.
It does a job though. Like,
no, that's an awesome.
Okay.
I mean, here's
a 28
awesome.
millimeter miniature.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is $1.25 repainted, just to spice it up. Okay.
Yeah.
And they've got this whole line called Final Faction. Nathan and I, this is our thing. It's one of the coolest toys. Dollar for dollar, plastic for plastic, compared to any action figure line out there for Star Wars or Marvel. They don't have the greatest articulation. $1.25. Okay. This is another one that I repurposed into a gun platform. I built. All I did was build the seat on it. Nobody sits there, but it looks like you got a guy who's 28 mil can sit there and just blaze away on the battlefield. The legs move, whoop-de-doo, and it actually shoots little freaking arrow things. $1.25. Then they've got a whole bunch of aliens and action figures in the line. The action figures, I was never able to do anything but this. Real quick. Okay, I made this. It was an action figure to represent this old Ralpartha.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, the assassin with the ruined broadsword. This is my favorite miniature of all time. Now, mind you, it's tiny in comparison. I can't use it for crap. But I just took the action figure and some baby wipes, dried them out, used some glue and water, made the sword out of a popsicle stick, just to pay homage, okay?
Yep.
And it's not just Dollar Tree, but Dollar General, 99-cent store, whatever. All these places.
Makes me think of Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Are you an assassin?
I'm going to bring up one other thing is not that my friend liked it, but what was it? Heavy Gear was one that was that had some of the stuff where you start.
Yeah.
That sometimes I prefer. Again, it depends on how you want to deal with it. Do you want to be simulationist? Do you want a fast-paced game? And I think that BattleTech started getting a little too simulationist, but then it got too big. When I say skirmish, I Yeah. Okay. There,
This used to be a super soaker from the dollar store.
Oh, that's
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, it looks like
John Carter.
it almost looks like Jabba's like not Jabba's like main barge, but like one of the little support barge. That's what it looks
And
exactly like.
this turret here, the only gun that it has, actually comes from a dollar store tank. And I took some of the tanks and made tanks for basically Pour Hammer.
Yeah.
What you can do, whether it be miniatures, vehicles, or terrain, at some of these cheap stores and Hobby Lobby, not Hobby Lobby, Dollar Tree is phenomenal because they do sell a lot of decorative plant materials that you can use to make your bushes, your forests, your jungles. They got rock and just so much stuff. You could go in there. I mean, there's literally channels out there that do the same thing we do, but for other things, thanks, Shonner, Johnny Five. Yeah. You know, I know what you mean, Shonner, about the stores being kind of nasty, but we've got one that's like the cleanest store in town. And I was in there this morning. No, it was last night. And I watched a mom come in with her kid, and she's just like, "Oh my God, this place is amazing. This is the cleanest, nicest Dollar Tree I've ever seen." I just look at her and went, "You know it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here." And I mean, for you know, literally a tenth the price of whatever it is you're trying to, you know, cobble together, whether it's terrain or a freaking airship or robots or, you know, even the supplies at Dollar Tree, they've literally got an entire aisle of hobby materials, cheap paint, brushes. Don't recommend them, but you know, if you're on a budget, you know, you want to get your nephew or something like that into the hobby, go down there, you know, and buy some, you know, cheap stuff and go, here's a couple old minis. Here's a, you know, one good brush and some crappy brushes to do your base coats and your primers or whatever, your dry brushing. And
that's what I was going to say. It's like only in the middle do you really need a good brush. Like, you know, beginning and end, it's you kind of want a brush that's a little imperfect.
Here's the other thing, though, is, you know, we all talk about this, and we all probably need to do more of it. Go for a walk in your local nature area and go look up lichens and the little mosses everywhere around. And
same thing, Dollar Tree has them.
Well, no, I mean, go out and just pick them up.
You're stealing my other line, man.
Yeah,
we
get out into real world sometimes and go pick up stuff and dream what's out there. You know that I'm not trying to be, you know, flippant about this. Whenever we're talking about any type of miniature war game, you go between like how fast and how big. You know, I don't mind if a game takes longer if we're going to have a total of 8 miniatures going back and forth. I want to kind of have that fun back and forth fighting. That's great. But when you start getting up to 20 or 30, okay, the rules need to become more simplified. And when you get up into like 100, they need to really be simplified. And I think sometimes scale matters a lot on the type of rules that we need to have and the amount of abstraction that occurs.
Okay, I gotta read this off. This is hysterical. Steal from Nathan, not from the store. I get free sand, I get free rocks and gravel and twigs and things like that. And we take a lot of hikes, not so much lately because it's winter. But even the boy, he's doing hikes on his own now. I find out, going to these places that we used to go to together on the way home from school. And I'm like, why did you tell me? You know, who didn't want to get in trouble? I'm like, you've never been in trouble. But yeah, we actually find stuff on our hikes sometimes, like, you know, a bit of this or a piece of that or something, and then take it home and take it apart, you know. And you know, you never know what you're gonna find when doing this stuff. And spring's just around the corner. So get out there and you know, grab some twigs and some bark. Bark is a great medium for so many things. You can use it for rocks. You can use it for dead trees. You can use it for just, you know, bases and all kinds of stuff.
I'm building a War Games opponent out of bark right now.
I'm gonna say this much as, boy, if you can get some, Shell, I think where you are, it's a little bit better. If you can get some good old river gravel, especially if it's small, man, the colors that just come out of it. Or if you guys in the Northwest or I guess the Northeast, where they have a lot of the little pebbles, and especially all those colorful where they have the volcanic and stuff. Man, you can get greens and reds and just everything that's just gorgeous.
I actually stole from not a neighbor, but someone in the neighborhood. They, you know how they have those decorative rocks, in your yards. Well, they've got this side that's right by the sidewalk. They can't even see it from their house. You know what I mean? Because there's a wall. But they had these cool ass green sort of discolored rocks that they chose. And I'm like, oh my God, that is great for my next Cthulhu terrain. So I grab a couple of their rocks. And if they ask, I'd be like, I need a couple of rocks. Do you mind? And they ask me, and I'm like, I'm building a diorama, okay? Because if I tried going into the Call of Cthulhu thing, their head would explode, But there's so much cool stuff out there.
All you have to say is, I'm trying to do a 1920s diorama of a small shipping town, and these rocks would match up perfectly. And no one would argue about that. They're like, "Oh, 1920s, that sounds cool, so cool." And then just,
right. I didn't think of that. That's cool.
I did.
Which city? Innsmouth.
There is
they know it or they don't. If they know it, they're like, "Oh yeah, cool." Yeah.
There is a book of paper models of like that kind of Cthulhu-esque New England kind of terrain floating around.
You have to let me know what that is. Because
it's
believe it or not,
and it's just something. It's something really like I'll find it for you, but it's named something like really workaday where you wouldn't think, oh, that's Cthulhu related. But I just was looking at paper terrain, and then like found this book, and I was like, oh, like 1920s New England fishing village. Arcane University. I think I can see where this is going, kind of thing.
Yeah. What's the other one? Is if you have some rock tumblers, that's one. The other part is
we're doing that next.
If you have a,
it's the easiest thing in the world to buy terrain for like, Lothlorien or like Nexus 12. The solar moon of Nexus 12, but you try find like enough to make a street scene at around like 1910, 1915. It's a bit of an ask. Like you've got to really hunt around.
Unless you're going for Tombstone, Arizona, doing a Wild West thing.
Well, yeah, that's way better.
Then you're in hog heaven.
That's always been the issue. I mean, well, I always like to talk about the business side of stuff, but with places that do wargaming with terrain and that kind of stuff, it's like the lowest rung. And you may have to empty out a good sized city worth of terrain to actually do and shoot a scene. Either for something that's like what do you call it, like forced perspective, or something that's hobby, like for some kind of
well, I think it's why so many people like RP, like they role play these other periods, because it's just the material isn't there. Oh, you locked me in my garage again. What are you doing? Sorry, it's my lady friend. She's always.
I was afraid when you said she's locked in the garage again. I'm like, oh, at least it's not the basement. You're a little bit more civilized.
She just instinctively locks the door whenever she walks out, which like is the ideal setting, unless I'm in there.
You want to hear sillier than that real quick, just because you brought it up. My wife, you guys know I'm a smoker. I just went out to have a cigarette. She will, and I go out on the back patio. It's a sliding glass door with a little latch, and at like 8 o'clock at night, she'll go and she'll lock it. She knows I'm going to be up till midnight, and I'm like, that's not going to keep me from going outside. It's snowing outside. I hate the cold, and I still will put on 2 jackets to go out and have a cigarette. But you think locking the door with the little click is going to stop me?
It depends on whether you're entering or leaving. If you try to enter, it might or slow you down.
Look, she knows I can open any door in the house. Even if you were to lock me out there, which she's done, I just went and I grabbed the door and I just went click and pulled it open. She's like, ah!
I know.
Like, opening doors is, part of the business. So my old business. So yeah, it blows my family's mind that I could just credit card through any door, not just here at home. It's like, what you're doing. Omen, I've seen your little toolkit. Um,
I'm not saying I'm very good at it, and I've never had any luck with a credit card. But damn it, I can use other tools that I've watched the lockpicking lawyer use. And you're like, oh, well, that's kind of cool.
That guy. I love that guy. The aluminum can trick is when I saw that, I was just like, I'm never buying another padlock again.
Well, it just reminds you that it's intended to stop honest people or lazy criminals. It is not intended to stop a dedicated person from getting in your house. That's what got in
Are you implying I'm a criminal?
I try not to worry too much about.
No.
I try not to worry too much about home security. I just sit at home
is that
waiting.
It's a lazy criminal. I don't know if you're lazy or if you're not a criminal, but it doesn't really matter. But I have to laugh. It's like if someone really wants in and they're like, well, this will stop. I'm like, really? I can tell you this much. Most houses in a Sawzall, I'm getting in there one way or the other. You know?
And
my only security measure is just to be at home all the time. Like,
bring
if
that's
you break into my house, I hope you like the War of the Spanish Succession because that's all you're leaving with.
Yeah, bringing it back to RPGs. I mean, in my system, the profession system is explicit about people that are in law enforcement and want to break the law. A lot of the skill set is the same.
I know. Well,
it really is. It really is. Anybody who's not in uniform, I'll say, after a certain point in law enforcement, not just law enforcement, but rescue and the medical profession, they have a lot of useful skills that could be used in a lot of various ways. Let's just say, I know Bo is helped out with a lot of his medical information. I got struck by lightning. You probably can't see it, but I've got this big round scar here.
No way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And
I've always wanted to get struck by lightning. Like I figured.
I was thinking that.
I figured I'd be really good at playing piano
afterwards.
Touch
the earth, and you're going to touch the earth together, and it forms an arc between you two. No, I'm sorry.
Well, the thing is, I was at a job site, and they left me overnight. They forgot to come pick me up because I was the one guy on the job site. We were building a gun range in Virginia, and I got struck, and it sucked. And they said, you want to go to the hospital or anything? The next day, I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna live, but I got this hole in my arm. So what I did as a dumbass, apparently, I just poured peroxide on it a couple of times a day, just soak the thing, just And he's like, don't do that. That actually made it harder for you to heal. Rubbing alcohol and the other things. And I didn't know. I'm just like, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm not getting an infection because I can almost see the bone. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, I'm not going to the hospital.
Man, some of you guys have the most fantastic stories. It's great.
Well, what do you think of the storytellers?
The reason you don't want to, you don't want to get struck by lightning is because you may be needing a change of attire. Let's just say that.
I always had this idealized notion of it where like I get hit by lightning and then I'm a piano genius like afterwards,
And Game Master isn't a title for the Week of Heart. That's what I'd say.
And you're not allowed to use master anymore. And I'm thinking, bow to me, slaves. Anyway.
I don't know. It's my RPG. It's my rules. So I do what I want.
My whole thing is that
you forgot to say that in Cartman's voice.
No,
I'm doing it right.
I do what I want.
Well, part of me goes, everyone's like, I don't tell anyone. Look, I'm slowing down what's going to occur or what you can expect in the game, and you can self-select. That's the way that I don't have to be a dick about it. If I say, look, we're going to be playing a Call of Cthulhu, there's going to be mature themes, there's going to be violence, and there's going to be things that turn your stomach. If you have a problem with that, there's the door.
I'm way more inclined to handhold, like if I run a game, like way more.
Well, no. I mean, but if I'm telling someone this, and they're like, "Well, no, I want it to be where we well, I want hugs and and little pats on the head." And I'm just like
I'm not gonna run a game where like nobody gets hurt and nobody eats cheese because like that causes death or something like.
You mean
but
I'm lactose intolerant. You can't give me flashbacks of like. And all I could think is, not the game for you. You need to go to the door. Well, I mean, what gets me is you don't have to be a dick to get rid of people. You just have to say, well, the game's not for you. Thank you for coming. Good luck. And guess what? They'll self-select. What they may do is, well, you didn't bow down to it. Well, you know what?
I've been trying so hard to get into like an RPG campaign lately that like it's amazing to me that people have as much conflict as they do. Like I'm just like, isn't it fun?
I don't think they do. I will be one of the people to say that I think more than half of the conflict is either imagined or made up for content.
I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more.
Well, here's the thing. They take the one experience out of the hundreds that they've had.
They take an imaginary experience.
Well, no. I mean, even the one real experience they've had in hundreds of games, and they blow it up like it happens in every game. Like, no, that was the one weirdo you have, and you could just, you can get rid of them. And that's what I mean. Is, of course they do some of that, but the other part is you can self-select if you're playing My Little Pony and what are those little trolls with the hair or whatever?
Trolleys.
Anyway, and you have the little trolleys, and you say we're going to have rainbows and sunshine, and everyone's going to hug at the end. I'm probably going to say,
I don't know if you've ever seen the Rainbow Bright movie, but it's pretty dark.
Oh, actually, what was
also the My Little Pony movie? Very dark. Like these early '80s things. Like watch the Smurfs.
Please don't ruin the Smurfs for me. Please don't ruin the Smurfs for me.
I'm sorry. It's already ruined. There's some real.
Well, there was only one female Smurf.
You know why I bring that up? The reason I brought up the Smurfs is, back when we first moved in here, we made friends with they were either Mormons or Latter-day Saints, Jehovah's Witnesses, and they were the nicest people in the world. I miss them all the time. They were great. They'd come over and they had a big family, and they'd bring up their children from all ages, and they would just dote on Jackie like you can't imagine. He was they just loved him to death, and I think they moved or something. But we had this little discussion about the Smurfs, and they don't do Smurfs. It's not allowed because the name or something I forget is full on derived from some sort of demonic lore back in the Middle Ages or something. And I'm like,
well, Papa Smurf is
they're just little blue
he's
guys.
Karma, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously, Karma.
I mean, look. All I'm saying this is Kevin's right on this, which is the 80s were darker than we remember, but they were not dark enough for me. Where at that age, I wanted Fire and Ice, and not the gummy bears or the Smurfs. Right.
And I think they were darker, but they were darker in the sense of like we need to like add these notes of dissonance to the story, so that children learn about death and danger and
it's like
mortality.
It's like Grimm's Fairy Tales.
Yeah, whereas now it's like, here's a crack pipe, here's your address. Put it on.
I wish one of my favorite ones is the Gargoyles TV
that was a good one.
The first two seasons, the third season does not exist to me. Anyway,
it's usually how it goes.
Well, why would you replace the writer? It's always funny. They replace the writer and think that they're going to somehow do better, and it just kills it. Like, well, duh. What did you think was going to happen if you suddenly replace? Anyway, sorry about that. But no, back to miniatures. Man, that would be kind of a cool one. You were talking about that. A Gargoyles miniature game with all of the different things that they have in there, because you can have Xanatos with the, the Gargoyles, and then,
easy to paint
stuff.
Too.
What's that?
Easy to paint too.
Yeah, well, the Oberon.
Don't steal any gargoyles. Don't take any gargoyles that you see on your nature walks. Like if you're lugging at home in a sack.
But see, some of these games I think would be great. And while we talk about miniature games, to be fair, is a lot of them are board games with miniatures, and I'm okay with that. I love miniatures over counters. I really do. I love them over standees. I do. That's why I bought the Conan the Conan board game, because I love all of that stuff. At a certain point, though, it's like, well, how many miniatures do you need? How much am I going to paint? But I'm okay with just doing counters too. I like both. the counters if I'm cheap, and I think that's one thing that's missing from our. We talked about some of the lexicon and some of these is why I like the little skinny minis that they have. I would be okay if they would do some of those for like ships and things, and then say now you can buy the 3D version, but the 2D version is for us that's really cheap, and you can just the standees and what elevations they are. The other part is, I don't know, from the old wargamer standpoint that I was, what's so wrong with making rules abstract and try to be as realistic as possible? Oh, what is that?
That's paper minis.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they do rules in the back as well, but this one's a whole castle.
Yeah. I mean, those are so cool for that stuff. Yeah, especially when you stand them up or the old.
Believe it or not, James, Mutant Chronicles put out 3-box sets. That one was a giant bridge, like this freaking long, okay, made out of paper. One was the inside of a temple, and one was this sort of like bunker, and they were made out of paper. And I got them, and I'm like, I'm gonna photocopy the crap out of them, mount them to more cardboard, and make even more of them for like nothing. You know what I mean? Once you buy the original, and that's why I've never assembled them. Plus, the cardboard was really flimsy, really thin, thinner than cereal box packets and things like that. But with a little bit of wood reinforcements, it would have been fine. And if I just did that to
that's what I'm thinking with my BattleTech paper models, like the buildings.
They're just stand-up.
Just putting them on a nice base and like putting them with a varnish and texturing them, like
for what do you call it? Buildings? Yeah, that's about all you need.
Well, the old.
Well, look at the original Epic Space Marine buildings. You guys remember the original Epic? They were just cardboard with a plastic topper to hold them together, and I still have those, and they're still standing strong after 30 plus years. I'm going to use them for BattleTech or CAV because I need a bunch of buildings. I'm like, what am I going to do for terrain? Oh yeah, I'll just James gave me the idea last night. The scale isn't that much different, or maybe maybe not for maybe for BattleTech it might be a little too big.
You can always get away. You can always get away with using the scale down for terrain. Yeah. It's not a problem, really.
I'm just
you just build the base up a little bit.
It's still waiting for this Kickstarter, which of course they screwed up on for the Darkest Dungeon, but the Monster Apocalypse terrain, which of course is cheap plastic and everything else, but I'm like, that's perfect. You roll out the board, you put your things down, and then you have Godzilla fight another Godzilla, and sometimes that's just a lot of fun for stuff. And I love the minis. We'll see if they ever come in. I may have just lost $500.
Now you're gonna make me bring up Giant Monster Rampage.
One
of the it's you can get it for like $10. Okay, it literally tells you to use toy dinosaurs and Legos to play a Godzilla game.
Yeah.
Okay. And my son and I, when he was in his Godzilla phase, we had a blast with it. We built big old buildings because the damage would be commensurate with the number of like pegs or blocks of the Legos that would be damaged on the building. So you'd have to disassemble the building as you punch it or tail smack it. And, it was a simple point buy system. You build your monster and then you just fight monsters. And what could be simpler? And, it was I think it was like the toy something system, and they had another couple of games where they literally, one was Green Army Men, but the Godzilla game was incredible. The second edition version kind of sucked, not gonna lie, but the first edition with the supplement where you could make hordes of little monsters like giant ants from them or something like that. But it was a miniature game using toys, so you didn't have to go out and you bought the book. Go look in your kid's toy box, find some dinosaurs or a robot or a G.I. Joe because it's just a giant dude,
think about it.
Wait a minute. Let's not forget on how great terrain is if you want to use Legos. You have plenty of those. Or if you want the big old mega blocks, which are even bigger than that.
You missed the beginning of the show.
I'm sorry,
I often just buy board games because the minis are nice. Like I bought the Doom board game and I've never played it, but the minis are so cool that I was like, these will be handy sci-fi.
Which Which
You know?
board game for the, because they've got the one where they've got the $50 for all the miniatures with it, which is the new one, which is the card-based one.
I don't know. Let me have a look.
I don't have it. I have the one that has just the simple stuff, but they got out the new one, and you can buy it from Direwolf. And it
This
what's
is
good
under
is it's
like
the
this
mini.
is under like 10 kilos of metal. So like, just
Okay.
let me know if you recognize it from the spine. Can you see it?
All right. I see Monster. I see Doom.
There we go.
Doom.
Okay,
That's what he said. I think. It was
Doom.
Doom.
No, I was talking about the Dune ones.
Dune.
Yeah, Dune. They have
The
it on
planet name is Dune.
I think that would be a cool one. That's why when I was talking about stuff going from space to the ground, and you just get the Harkonnens and you get all of that stuff, and then if you can get the worm, I mean, to me that's just so cool. It doesn't have to represent a 1-to-1. It can represent.
I can show you a video. Wrong. I can show you a video where you can literally make the sandworm out of toilet paper, a hot glue gun, and some toothpicks, and it will look good. I don't mean like
just use
like
the
crap.
sausage. Just use the sausage. The longer you play with that sausage, the more like a sandworm it will become.
You know what?
Somebody clip that.
You know
in
what?
6 months, that thing is going to be sentient and it's going to be creating spice.
I'm just afraid what's going to ride the sandworm at that point. Anyway.
E. coli and
Charlotte's worried that I'm going to be standing outside this evening with a sausage in the air, like waiting for a bolt of lightning.
All right.
I mean, those are the, but that sometimes, part of me when it goes for the miniatures is miniatures are to inspire you, but they shouldn't limit you. And just because you don't have, and if you don't have what's theirs, just like we all talked about, I remember Legion Myth talking about this too, which is how many times did we use where we cut pieces of paper in school because we weren't allowed to have certain things. We put like markers on them, so it might like be M for Minotaur or whatever. And
it's like you're playing Rogue at school.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing all that stuff, and well, what did you do? Well, he cut up this piece of paper and he put little markers on it, and they're like, well, and then they use little chits, like they did with the old D&D to as dice instead of having dice, and like you can't stop people from playing if they really want to play.
My son a couple of years ago. Before the thing, he was playing a game that he and his friends made up where they were making up paper standees of cultists and Cthulhu monsters and all kinds. It was like they were basically like trying to play Cthulhu Wars before I owned it.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know what they were, they made up their own rules. I never understood, their kid rules, but they were, the imagination is the most powerful thing in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
and where there's a will, there's a way.
That and cardboard.
Well, I'm going to say, that's how I stabbed my thumb. Is in the old back of Rogue Trader, I took out all the perforated sheets. I Xeroxed them. I then glued them onto cardboard, from a box, and then I was using an X-Acto knife to cut them. And I stabbed my thumb really good at the top here, and so blood was shooting out, and I was like,
like you're not a a hobbyist person in miniatures and terrain unless you have at least one emergency room story, because it's just kind of the nature of the thing. It's small things, sharp objects, and
hot glue gun.
Gonna happen.
Does that count?
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, like 3rd-degree burns are good too.
Oh, what's the other one? Whenever you use the little, whenever you're using the little drill bit right there, that's just really tiny, and it sticks into your thumb really good, and you're like, oh god.
The pin vise.
Yeah. The pin
well,
vise.
Look, these are the ordeals of the role playing and what would you call it, wargaming kind of crossover. I hate to use the word community, but
Well, no. What you're saying is the hobby. it's the hobby.
Yeah,
I don't want to say, because like everything else, when people say community, it's like, well, you have to start slimming it down until you really, the community is the people that play with each other, which is the community. Yeah.
That could be.
But I mean, man, there's so much that, well, we talk about the great minis in there. I just love they saved Hanna-Barbera from Spring. Well, I'll tell you this much is, the Smurfs, I saw them in Germany, and then I guess they were there in the 70s, and they moved them over here to the United States. But I you know, yes, that is true. I will give Justin Thor LP that. Predators have right, but that's one of the games I would like to see. I'd like to see. Speaking of which, there's been a lot of really cool ones. What is the Homeworlds come out? The problem that I have with some of them nowadays is the complexity gets up to the point where it's better to be a war game, and then sometimes, or that it's so rules like that. I really feel like I don't get into. That's why I like the like James L was showing us, the ones that are doing this campaign style minis game, short 1 to 3 hour games that you have, but your characters improve over time. And so when one dies, you're like, oh, I lost so it's not like, oh, I lost my MLRS, man, that sucks.
Yeah. So to plug my my own stuff, I feel like the reason that we have these like too high, too low complexity problems is that the game itself isn't tuned to either the genre or the scope of play.
Wait a minute, Kevin, can you do one thing? Can you bring up a picture of what you have for your stuff?
So it's all digital right now.
Okay.
But,
well, I mean, next time print out a page so you can go look at my stuff.
I could do that. But yeah, I'm starting on the first setting. I want to do Titans of War, which I've talked about on here a few times, but that's a setting that's gonna require every secondary system to kind of have at least a little bit of rules for the game masters to kind of keep that stuff going. So I'm gonna first be working on a game that's more like you have your adventuring party of like 3 to 5 people, and then you have the little community that's basically survived a very bad thing, and then you have this huge city that is like the ruins of the very bad thing, and just bringing that in to kind of say, well, this game is tuned directly to this adventuring with this size of a group to facilitate good gameplay and not have combat that takes 6 hours, because I'll tell you, even with the most basic of 3rd edition rules for D&D, just for using any system's sake, like even Apocalypse World or something like that, some people there's so many little details and little edge cases that people want to get hung up on. You just gotta like really put something usable in front of people, and then and here are the rules to kind of expand this, or mix it up or whatever.
Well, see,
but just give them the thing that works.
I mean, that was one of the things I liked about Rogue Trader initially. I still think that they don't have a really good medium level game. It still takes too long which is why they only put us 4 turns. But then, when we were talking about Adeptus Titanicus, I know that so much Games Workshop, that was perfect. And then Epic came out of that when they said, oh, we're going to bring in small little other stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I kind of, like for Battletech did fine if it was like Lance on Lance. But then after that, once you start adding everything else, it really slowed the game down. And I said, okay, and that's why apparently Alpha Strike has come out, but I haven't played Alpha Strike, so I can't talk about that. But I think that there seems to be this, how do I want to put it, which is what they did with Renegade Legion. They did it small, they did it medium, then they did it big, where and I think that's one of the things that I really miss. Go ahead.
Oh, good. I was just gonna say, for me, what kind of story are you gonna tell? Like that's the question that I have. I mean, is it like, are you telling a story that is like a general looking on the battle between, you know, mechs, and that's the level of detail that you need, or are you the mech pilot, or are you the infantry guy that's looking up at the mech pilots? Like, these are three different games, and I think that what happens is a company has a game system that, and they're kind of married to it, and they try to make it fit too much, and then they think that they need to sell rules because people buy rules. What's up, Shadow?
I'm not so sure.
Uh,
I think a good rule set. I think a good rule set should be able to do combined arms. Like maybe not at the RPG level, but
Right.
certainly at the skirmish level.
Well, I'm just saying I agree with him. And what, you know, how is the game developed and what size are you doing it? And I think that was something that Renegade Legion did a good job with. Is they really went up as, you know, they had their, well, I forgot what it was called, but they had their Aerotech initially, but then they had the Leviathan, which is the giant ships, and then you're dealing with not a single fighter anymore. You're now dealing with big, massive ships over long distances, and there's a scale like he's talking about. Just like I said, is whenever I like playing certain games, I like operational levels. That means you have to deal with the logistics, and yes, you're not. You know, when Elfbay was talking, that would take a whole turn. Man, I love it sometimes when it's like, no, your battle will take this long, and then you have another phase that's in the background, and you're playing, and it's going to take, it's a campaign. It's going to take weeks. You might be playing different battles for that as you're going through.
Right.
And you know, there's that feeling towards it, which does give a role-playing element, oddly enough, whether you can go, well, the 12th Legion got decimated. What am I going to do? But that's what comes down to at a very high level. They're going to say, oh, I'm going to take out this not the drop ship. I'm going to take out the jump ship equivalent. That way they can't resupply. There's a lot of desperate gambles for stuff like that. And I don't know, has any of you played Star Wars Rebellion?
I saw it. Like I've seen the what do you call it, like the explanation and stuff, and
I haven't
it's
played
an
it.
interesting one.
Some people talk about it's really good. The miniatures are kind of cool to look at. You know,
I heard it's kind of iffy.
What I've heard is it's asymmetric, and if you play the side you don't like, you're gonna hate it. But I was listening to one guy said, I hated the game until I swapped sides, and they said, oh, once I swapped sides, I had so much more fun. But not, again, not all game is for everyone, and that's, I think that's some of the hard parts of getting into this. Just like I know weird World War II, man. Don't get me wrong. I think that Nazis and the Cthulhu of Cthulhu and guys with guns shooting down werewolves and dealing with vampires. I mean, it sounds so cool for it's a Hellboy feel for that.
Sure.
And you know, how is that any different than Mutant Chronicles? Except one might have lasers or other high tech stuff, and in the meantime, the other one has tech that we all are very familiar with. I think that's you know, that's the other part too. Speaking of which, you know, you talk about miniatures. You know, how do you deal with something? Because I'm thinking of the old Gene Stealer game where they had the
Space Hulk.
Well, it was Space Hulk, but it was a Gene Stealer thing where they had where they first brought out the Grey Knights, and they talked about how they can go through with all the librarians and stuff. Deathwing was the second, but they brought out a third one, which was the hybrid, where they had the hybrid Gene Stealers, some with 3 arms, some with 4, some with 2, where they had guns and things. But that one had the Nemesis, the Nemesis bolters, or the but they had the but instead of using like points like they did in the Space Hulk, they started using cards, and then you had a certain number of cards you could play and things like that. And that's another thing I think that I kind of miss in certain areas. Man, the hard, thick cardboard for showing, you know, effects is cool. Yeah. It seems, I think sometimes we get wrapped up in a lot of stuff, but man, it's really cool to see like this. Okay, this has a vortex and it's going to move around the board. You know,
I agree. I agree, and I also think that point systems in general are like a mistake for small scale games. Like, Fistful of Lead, you get like 5 to 8 guys, and if you want to add traits, you drop a guy, you know. Or if you want to replace a guy with like 2 or 3 really low-level grunts, you can do that, you know. And that's it. And as long as you end up with the same number of slots, like that's the game, you know.
Well, thanks for trying to make me, spend more money on more books so I can go look at different stuff. I mean, I was looking at I've heard Oathsworn, but I saw that they brought out Starsworn. I don't know how that is, James L. I'm asking you because you seem to buy.
Do you
all
mean
these...
Stargrave? Do you mean Stargrave relative to Frostgrave? Yes. They're both really good, but I would say that my regret with Frostgrave is not getting Rangers of Shadowdeep instead.
Okay.
And as regards Stargrave, like much the same. Like I probably should have gotten like 5 parsecs, you know.
Oh really?
Because I played mostly solo anyway.
Yeah.
And I do kind of like those games where it's like you've got a couple of squads and you're just kind of moseying around the board and generating enemies. It's fun. Anyway, well, I'm gonna wrap up now because I'm not feeling too good. I'm in a bit of pain, so I'm gonna lie down for a bit.
You know what, James? Hope you feel better. I got to go too. So we will all meet back here, those of us who can, where next week we will talk about Games Workshop, the good, the bad, and the ugly, reminisce some old times, and maybe hope for some better times from that company, because I've got a Games Workshop 1,000 yards from my house. I can get there in 10 minutes on a bike. And, I was there for the grand opening of this place, and I've been there less than that many times because of things. Not because of money. I could go and buy them out if I wanted to, okay? It's not that. It's the way
people just don't like how they do business. And they've been doing business that way for like such a long time that even though I'm nostalgia for like the old, like I have nostalgia for the old color schemes and the old games and the old style, like I kind of remember them being dicks back then as well, like vaguely, so they were definitely they were definitely on the dick trajectory. You know what I mean? Like,
but see, when in the pool of game masters, if you aren't a dick to some level, you don't have a game. So I think that's kind of the very bottom level of it. But what I'll tell you is that it probably has to do with the business side of it, and it being even more constricting than like what happens with the comic book.
They're really driven
distributors
to upsell. They're really driven to upsell, to not engage with people that they regard as time wasters. And
the problem is that the
culture of like fostering a games group around the store just doesn't really exist anymore because it's not profitable.
I'm going to say this much though is, I'm not trying to knock it, but Games Workshop was used to the UK model, which worked. Whereas the U.S. model had much more independence that relied on multiple sources of revenue. Yeah. And I think that has hurt them in certain ways. I'm not saying it's perfect, but, I go over to places, Games Workshop maybe takes up 10% of the store at most, which I mean is big for a store, but it's not any bigger than a lot of the D&D side on it. And it kind of hurts them from that aspect. And they forget, not everyone lives in the big cities. I go to my local comic book store to get a lot of stuff, or I used to, not anymore, but I used to. And, you have the Games Workshop. Well, if you didn't have the really cool new stuff, But, I don't think that, but I think that when they were there, Games Workshop used to sell D&D and all this other stuff. And they were the only hobby store out there in some place like Great Britain, but not in the U.S. And I think that's that. And to be fair, I'm going to bring up one other thing here. I'm sorry, James, if you have to go, I understand. But the other part was they have reduced in how much they sold over the years. Mm-hmm. So what they're doing is they're squeezing the smaller number of players for much, much more in there. And that's, I'm not going to say it's going to kill the biz model. I'm going to say 3D printing will definitely hurt large companies that like that, whereas the small little niche ones we see, by the time I get an STL file to print everything out, it may or may not be worth it to me. There is an economy of scale.
Right. So. The moral of the story is that you don't get whales if you don't fish for minnows.
Yeah.
Like That's basically
the other part is like you're saying is
Good point. Good point,
is,
Kevin.
like for me with D&D, you know, they're talking about that. If you made great games, I would buy it. If you look at how much I buy from, you know, whether it was Modifius or Free League, I have spent more with those companies in the last 5 years than I have with D. Even though I bought 6 books total, I've spent more on that than I have for D&D. And I'm going, look, I've spent more in OSE than I have probably on D&D.
Well,
go ahead.
And just like a very short thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about it next week more, but hype cycle marketing got really popular. And what the problem is, though, is that hype cycle marketing is for events. It's not for products. And what's happened is, but it's been rolled into products. So you have everybody trying to do these hype cycles for products. And, well, people want a good product. They don't, I mean, it's like, yeah, maybe some of them pre-purchase or whatever. But, like, if you have a bad product after that, I mean, you're just cannibalizing the people that are going to look at that next hype cycle. Because it's like you go to a bad show and it was a bad show, you know, and it's like there's, you know, it's like good act, bad show happens. But yeah, like hype marketing, that's all it is.
Well, I'm going to say, you know, the biggest hype is, not that I really like it, is, you know, Shadow talking about Mutant Chronicles. Okay, I lucked out. I bought a bunch of books, which I said, you know what? Originally when I looked at it, I wouldn't touch it. But Shadow's like, man, it's great. You know, just talking about not talking about the world. And I think that a lot of that was with GW as well, was the, you know, their lore is what has sold them so much, because there are great competitions out there. But man, you know, Shadow talks about this. I listened to Legion of Myth talk about Earth Dawn. And then I remember I didn't get that feeling when I read Earth Dawn. And you know, it's like, oh, okay. And whenever Shadow starts talking, you know, like we all talk about Rogue Trader. Why do we love Rogue Trader so much? Because as broke kids, I could grab shampoo bottles and Elmer's glue bottles and turn them into stuff and allow your imagination to run, because I didn't have the money for that. And now I think sometimes they forget about that. I'm not trying to knock it, but I was at a FEMA conference a few days ago. And they were talking about trying to bring people in the college years. And, you know, how many engineers can we bring in? I said, you got to get them when they're young. And I don't mean this in a bad way. But, man, the ones that you get when they're in primary school, so 6th grade and below, or where they go, that's really cool, I'd love to do that. They'll still have that love 30 years later. Now, there may be this big gap where they don't have any money. A lot of people in their 20s and early 30s, well, they got life to deal with. They're trying to set up. They got family and stuff. Well, now their kids are old enough to play the games, and they're like, you know, like Shadow's doing. Hey, I have a son. You are going to enjoy the same things I did as a kid, you know, and you get excited, and the kid gets excited, and then the kid gets really excited, so you get more excited, and you're like, yeah, let's all do this. And I think that's sometimes what's missing in that, and I don't think they understand that. Is there, to be fair, they're public companies now. They're looking at quarterly results. They're not looking long-term growth. Yeah. They're not looking 10 years.
For something like GW, again, I know that we're going to talk about it more next week, but they don't they don't make it easy to get in and do GW product lines badly. Like they don't really there's no like first steps into like. Well, I mean, you know, it's like Shadow's talking about the painting lessons and that kind of stuff, but really that is a wow moment. That's not a I can do this moment. And yeah, that is I would say, like, when it comes to any hobby that has to do with physical media, that like you have to kind of give a nudge and then watch, and then the people that do it and they suck at it for a long time, at some point they're gonna not suck at it so much.
Well, the other part is, I'm not trying to be mean with it, is, and I understand why they do some of it, is, man, if you make the models easy to put together and to put out, and they look cool, and I'm going to use Space Hulk as a perfect example with those old push fits, the newer Space Hulk, those push fits were fantastic for visual, and if you don't make it where you have to paint them all the time, I'm saying it's good to have that, but if you can make some of them, man, it is so. I hate saying it. You want the kid to play your game. Well, yeah, you know what, Justin? That's somewhat true. But I used to play games that took me 3 months to save up for my allowance. You know, I'm not trying to knock it.
Not a year, but not a full year.
Well, the other point is I could play with my friends within that couple of months. That's the point, is you want it when they buy the game, if they can play with their friend. You can't, and you don't want, $300. I'm sorry. Well, maybe some kids are doing that, but you know what I bought my son for his birthday? I bought him an oscilloscope. Well, no, the oscilloscope might be about $300, but I bought him a clamp meter, and that was only like $70. And he was running around the house doing that. It's like, look, if it's going to get so expensive that I would rather just buy you a DeWalt set, guess what? You can build all those shelves behind Shadow, and we were building. He had a lot of fun building those tree bookshelves over there.
And when the games are more than the real tools, that's an issue.
I agree with you on that.
Guys,
And
I hate to cut it short, but I got
right.
a boogie. If you guys want to hang out while it's the thing, but I have another show I have to do. It's Saturday. Okay. I hope to see both you guys during the week. I just sent you a little message there, Kevin. I'm looking forward to seeing what you got. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. This was a nice, trip down memory lane. We're going to do it again next week. So bring out your favorite Games Workshop horror stories or love stories. Because, each and every one of us still has a little bit of hope, if not a lot of bit of hope, for the company that,
we're going to tell a little story about about over-engineering and about bad PR.
I'm going to bring up this much. The rule book.
No.
It's no. I'm just saying, you can still find the rule books in PDF somewhere on the internet web, and you don't have to use their miniatures. Anyway, sorry about that. Well, that's
Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
I took that.
See you later,
Sorry.
Shatter. Bye-bye.
Bye.